You wanna look at the camera? Come here. You're so cute. You're so cute. You're just gonna sit there. Look. Oh, you're so cute. Oh, how cute. Okay, so I moved to Virginia a month and a few days now. Like I've been here for a little bit, and I have 2 large Rottweilers, and moving them was something that I didn't know how to do. I didn't know how to approach it, and it was something that was really really scary and new for me, and I tried to do as much research as possible. I think I started doing research like 4 or 5 months before I left. It was really scary, like how pets are dying on airlines and pets are accidentally being sent to like Japan and someplace that they really are not supposed to be. So I was really scared to do this, but I had no choice. And I looked at a bunch of YouTube videos, and the majority of those YouTube videos either A, didn't have a large breed of dog that they were traveling with. I think the largest breed I saw was a pit bull. The other thing was all these pets that I were seeing were being flown in cabin, which would be great. And I do, like, technically I do have a letter that Champ and Leia are my emotional support animals. The only thing is they're large dogs and there's 2 of them. So most airlines, if not all airlines, will only allow you to have 1 emotional support animal in cabin with you. And I thought about that, but there was no way I could choose between either one of them who was going to be traveling with me in cabin and who was going to be going as cargo. Like, it's like telling a mom to choose which child to travel with them and which child to ship separately. Like, there's no way. And it sucks. I really wish, like, I even called Southwest, like, begging them, like, is there any way possible if I have a note from my doctor to have both of my dogs in cabin with me, and they could not budge. So that really sucked. So I basically had to figure this all out on my own. There was no other videos online of like people transporting large dogs, especially in multiple dogs either. Most videos were all just 1 dog. So I had quite a few people asking me how I traveled with the Champ and Leia, how it went, what the process was like, how much it cost. So I wanted to make a video because there isn't really one out there for someone who was in my situation. And I know how extremely scary it was for me. So I want to, I guess, make this video to help anyone else who is possibly going through something similar, is going to be traveling with a large pet that they have no choice but to place into cargo. So that would kind of to ease your mind a little bit. It's still scary. There's nothing not scary about your fur baby going into the cargo area of a plane, and you're not there to watch them constantly and know how they're doing and know if they're safe. I mean, they're safe, but you know what I'm saying. So this video is for everyone who is looking to travel with their large dogs, preparing to travel with their large dogs right now. This is not necessarily a guide. This is just my process and maybe some tips and a little bit of help for people who are getting ready to take these trips and want to hear it from someone who's gone through it. So I have a list because it's a lot. So I did mention that I had to do a lot of research. I not only had to look up what airlines allowed dogs to fly, what airlines allowed like in cabin, how many in cabin, how many you could even fly with cargo, because there is a limit, believe it or not. I didn't know that. What airlines would allow what. So let's see. So like, for example, Southwest doesn't fly pets in cargo at all. So with Southwest, you have to fly pets in cabin, which really sucks because if you have a large breed dog, basically you can't take a large breed dog unless you have like an emotional support animal letter, which I did, but I have 2 animals and they wouldn't let two animals with that 1 letter, even though on the letter it does state that I do have 2 emotional support animals. Southwest has a limit. They only allow 1 emotional support animal. Everything else, all pets are in cabin, so Southwest was automatically out of the question. I even called them. It sucked because I love Southwest. I'm so loyal to Southwest. I love them so much, but it just wasn't possible. Another thing to look out for is flight restrictions. This is something that I had no idea about. I just thought, oh, every airline, if they can take pets, they can take them whenever. So, for example, American Airlines will not fly pets that are traveling in cargo if the temperature that day is above 85 degrees. I lived in Texas, so I called them just to double check because I was like, hey, I'm in Texas, like I have 2 dogs that I need to fly out and it's always like 95 to 100 degrees here. Is this possible? And they basically told me that I would either have to fly either really early in the morning, late in the evening when the temperature dropped, or months from now. So basically my only options were super early, super late, or in December. So American Airlines was also out of the question, which it sucked because 2 airlines were out now and I was getting really scared because I knew that airlines like Spirit, even though I don't know if I would ever fly Spirit. I've heard so many bad things. I don't care how cheap it is. I don't want to fly Spirit. I don't think they fly any pets in cargo, so I don't even think that was an issue. I didn't even bother calling. I ended up finding that United was pretty much the most pet friendly airline, which scared me because we've all heard the stories about United. So that was extremely worrisome, but I didn't have very many other options, so I kind of had to go with that. So United ended up being the most pet friendly airline in my case, where I was able to get them both into cargo. Another thing to ask is if you're going to be traveling with your pet, like you're going to be on the plane with your pet, a lot of times there's a limit on how many pets in cargo you can have. That's usually based on the size of the airplane. So originally I was looking at one flight that was going to be a direct from Texas to over here in basically Washington DC. I called and they were giving me all this information, and then I told them, I was like, I have 2 large Rottweilers that would have to be flown in cargo. Like, is that, like, I need to find, basically I was asking how to get the process and tickets for them, and that's when the lady told me, oh, that airplane is too small, so you would only be able to have 1 pet on there. So that was where I came into a dilemma where I was either I change the flight or I, do the whole thing choosing which pet goes into cargo and which one flies in cabin with me, which I'm not doing. Like, I literally in my heart could not do that. Like, there's no way. If they're not with me, I at least want them to be together with each other, because from past life experiences that we've all gone through, I know that they deal with separation anxiety. If they're gonna be separated from me, I don't want them to be separated from each other, because I want them to be comfortable that there's some familiar face or familiarity. So basically with during that phone call, I found out that I had to switch the flight. So that's another thing to look out for, is the aircraft type. The aircraft has to be big enough to accommodate for however many pets you're flying and how large they are. That's something you definitely have to make sure, because if you book the flights, you basically have to go through a process of where you schedule that they're going to be flying, but I'll get to that later. I mean, you show up for your day of the flight and then you find out that you can't take both of them. That would be really bad. So yeah, you want to go ahead and find out if the aircraft for the flight that you're looking at can accommodate for however many pets that you're flying and how large they are and all of those details. Yeah, you want to find out all those details before the day of flight, because that could be really bad if you don't find out and then you show up and they can't fly your pets, because at that point they're not gonna budge for you. They can't. So another thing on here is to research all the things you're gonna need, the supplies. Luckily, I don't know how other airlines are because I'm only speaking from my experience with United. Once you call and make the reservations for your pets to fly with you, United will send you a email, and they send it to you almost every single day. Like, they send it so often, which is a good thing. It's a little annoying at the time, but then in retrospect you think about it and you're like, I'm really glad they sent that. They send you a checklist of all of the things you need to get and all the things you need to do prior to flying. It also gives you a timeline of when you should start doing that, and you definitely want to start on that checklist soon. One of the things I can think of is acclimating your pets to the crate. Luckily, Champ and Leia were kind of crate trained when they were puppies, so they're really comfortable in crates. They see that as a place where they sleep. It's like their little hut, so they're comfortable in crates. So I didn't have to focus much on that. But if your dog has like never been in a crate before, they've never been crate trained, as soon as possible, basically, start getting them used to being in the crate with all the stuff that they're gonna be flying with. So like, you also have to have like something absorbent at the bottom. I just had a blanket in there with them, and then you also have to have 2 bowls, a water bowl and a food bowl, that attach to the screen or the metal door of the crate, and no matter how short the flight is, you have to have those 2, or else again they will refuse to fly your pet. So make sure you get everything on this checklist. Absolutely nothing on there is optional. You have to get everything. But yeah, as soon as possible, start getting your dogs ready to be in the crate for extended periods of time. Get them used to being in there. Make sure that they can move comfortably in there. This leads into my next thing. For the crates, again, I'm only speaking on the perspective of someone who's flown with United because that was the most pet-friendly airline I could go with. This is where things got a little weird because their website said one thing and the people would say another thing, and then when I got to the actual gate, it was a completely different thing. Basically, on your checklist, it said that you have to get a crate that allows the dog to stand up comfortably, completely straight, with at least like 1 inch or 3 or something above their head, so that way they can turn around completely in the crate comfortably. Basically, they want it big enough for your dog to be comfortable for extended periods of time and not all cramped up and they can't move and they can't turn around or anything. So it has to be big enough for that. But also what I found was weird is that there's a limit on how big the crate could be. So that worried me a little bit because Champ technically would need a crate larger than what their maximum size is. So I pulled up the email and it says that the insured crate is appropriate size for your pet and does not exceed 30 inches in height. So the maximum height was 30 inches and you still needed, so basically your dog had to be less than 30 inches and they had to be able to be in there comfortably with the amount of height above their head, standing up straight. And so I got those crates that were the maximum size. Like, I got the biggest I possibly could that the airline would allow me to, and I set them up and I put Champ and Leia in there to see how they fit, and of course Leia fit in there because she's tiny, and then I put Champ in his, and that's when I realized, like, he fit, but he could not stand up completely straight. Like, he could stand up straight, but his head, like, I don't know if you get what I'm saying, like his head was kind of like not all the way down, but like, yeah, like he couldn't stand up completely straight. I was a little bit scared. I called the airline and all they told me was basically make sure it's no larger than 30 inches height, which was, I was like, okay, it's not. Fast forwarding to when I actually got to the gate, I found out that they change the requirements all the time. And basically what it was at the time that we were flying was, as long as the dog can turn around comfortably in the crate, that it was an appropriate size and that they were allowed to fly in it. So I was so scared. Luckily the girl at the gate who was doing the program's called Pet Safe. So the girl at the Pet Safe gate was so nice, and she told me, she's like, you're fine. As long as he can turn around, he's totally okay. Like, you don't have to worry about the whole 3 inches above the head thing. I was really happy about that. I was really scared about flying United because of all the horror stories you've heard online. And all in the media and everything, but this girl, I feel so bad because I cannot remember her name, but she was the sweetest and helped me out, and she really put my mind at ease when I was basically handing over my children to her. So another thing I want to mention is start looking, if you don't have a crate, start looking for them soon and compare prices, because if not, don't be like me. My memory card got full and I don't exactly remember where I left off. I just know I was talking about crates. So let's move on to the next thing. Next thing you want to do is they give you there's basically a bunch of forms you need to fill out. I had to fill out basically almost 2 of everything because I was traveling with 2 large dogs. It's like the customer agreement form. It's basically agreeing that you're going to bring your pets, you're going to pay, and all this stuff. So make sure you do that because that all has to be done before day of flight, and you also have to print those out. You have to have like a copy of per dog of everything. You also have to have a valid, like a picture of the pet that shows like their face and what breed they are. So I had to have a picture of Champ and I had to have a picture of Leia. Luckily, being a photographer, there's no shortage of photos of them. So I just, you know, pick and cropped couple of them out. Another thing that they needed, you also have to submit everything online into their portal, and they give you a link for all of this too. You have to submit all of these documents and these photos to that link before the day of departure, and I'm not sure if it's the same as the medical certificate time, like deadlines. United, they ask for the customer acknowledgement form, a picture of the pet that shows their breed and their face, and then a picture of their crate, and basically a scanned copy, or if your vet allows it, a digital copy of the medical certificate. Now the detail, like, let's go into the details of the medical certificate. Again, only speaking I'm gonna say this a million times in this video, only speaking on the experience that I have through United Airlines, but with the medical certificate, they had to get it within 10 days of flying, but no less than 5 days before the flight. So there's basically like a 5-day window where they have to get this medical certificate, and I am so glad that like I barely met that deadline, which basically you go in, you get a medical certificate. All that basically is kind of like a general physical for a human, but for a dog. They check your dog's like their blood pressure, they check their heart rate, they listen to their lungs, they ask if anything weird's been going on. They basically want to make sure that your dog is in good health to fly, so that way, just in case like they hear like something going on with their heart or something going on with their lung, you don't put your pet at risk of flying and with those altitudes and possibly risking their life. So that's basically the point of that. But also on the medical certificate, you have to, like, they have to put like when their last rabies shot was, when their last vaccines were, and they need like the details on that, so like what brand of rabies shot it was and all that stuff. So me being a crazy dog mom, I have actually kept every single one of their medical records since they were, like, I got them. So up until ever since their very first vet visit up until ever, I have every single document that they've ever gotten. When I went in for their medical certificate, like, they had access to every medication that my dogs have ever been on, exactly when they got their rabies shot, everything. So if you also have all of your dog's medical records, I highly suggest taking them. If you're taking them to a vet that they're not normally at. For me, unfortunately, I couldn't go back to the regular vet that my dogs go to because the wait is just too long there, and it was getting to the point where like I was getting down to the wire. So I went to a 24-hour hospital, and because I had those records, they could just go and look, see what their last when their last rabies vaccine was, whatever brand or however much dosage. I don't know all of those details. If you're a vet, I'm pretty sure all this makes sense to you, but to me it's just like, okay, whatever details. And I asked them like what were to happen if I didn't have all of these medical records. And they told me basically because my dogs weren't regular to their hospital, that they would basically have to go on a hunt for all of that information and be calling the other vet's office and trying to figure out everything, and that would have just been such a hassle. So I was really glad that I had all their medical records. So again, if you're not taking your dog to their regular veterinarian, make sure that you have all of the medical records so that way they can, you know, write all that stuff down. So it goes a lot faster. So another thing that you have to do with the United flight is 5 days, you have to have everything submitted online 5 days prior to the flight. So once you've hit like 4 days to your flight, you've missed the deadline on when those documents need to be submitted. So make sure that you stay on top of when those deadlines are, because it's a really, I imagine it's a headache if you don't get it in time. So next we're moving on to the day of the travel. So like how I said before that you had to submit a photo of your pet that showed their face and their breed. You also, at least for United, and I imagine other airlines might be the same with this, you have to print out 2 copies of that picture and bring it with you. So you have to have physical copies of that. And the reasoning for that is so they can pretty much tape it on top of the crates, so that way all of the flight crew and everything who are loading everything and know that there's supposed to be a Rottweiler in this crate, and if there's a Great Dane, there's something very wrong. So yeah, it's just to ensure, like, it's kind of like an ID on top of the crate where it's gonna have like the customer acknowledge form, all the information on my dogs, and their picture, so that way they can like just know that like this is the dog that goes in here. Also double check where the drop-off location was. So I was completely unaware that like shipping dogs in cargo was a completely separate area from like the general check-in area for pets and stuff. I think what messed me up is that on previous flights I had seen people bringing crates, their animal crates, into the actual like loading area, like where you check in your baggage and stuff. And I don't know if, again, I'm only speaking from the experience with United, but with United they have a completely separate area for that. So PetSafe, their program loads the dogs in the cargo area, so that's completely separate. So make sure you double check where the drop-off area is, because if you show up to the actual airport with both of your animals, they're not going to take them there, and it's just going to be such a hassle getting them in and out, parking, all that stuff. It's a nightmare. So double check where you need to take them. Make sure you remember all the crate bowls. They need one for water, one for food. The blanket that goes in, they need something absorbent, so you can have like a potty pad or a blanket like I had. I wanted them to have something that was familiar to them. You can't have like wood chips in there, hay, nothing like that. And basically it's so that way, just in case your pets have an accident, there's something there to absorb it, so that way a mess doesn't go everywhere into the cargo. So that's completely understandable. Oh, and also you need to be there, they need to be checked in 2 hours prior to flight takeoff. So our flight, I believe, was at 1 p.m. No, my flight took off at noon. So I dropped them off around, it was like 9:30 or 10. So they had to go in 2 hours before takeoff, and I wasn't entirely sure why, and then I realized what it was. And there's a lot of like paperwork and online work that the airline people have to do, basically checking them in, because it's not so simple. Basically when I was there, they asking me questions, all that stuff. I gave them all my information, all the files that I had brought. Another thing you need to bring is a small or like medium-ish size bag of a little bit of their dog food, and that's like it's required, but it's mainly for like longer flights, like just in case you're gonna be on like a I don't know, like an 8-hour flight and the dog needs to be fed during a layover. You put it in a little like Ziploc bag and they'll tape it onto the top of the crate, and during like a layover the employees will throw in the food in there for them so that way the dogs can eat. So that's another thing that I believe is required because I did have to bring that. The collars and leashes are also taped on top, so the dogs are not allowed to have like any harnesses on or any leashes on. I believe they can have like regular collars on while they're in the crates, but for the most part everything is taped on top so that way your dogs can be comfortable. There's no choking hazards or anything in there, so there's that. Also, another thing that just put my mind at some ease was during the check-in, the girl was asking me if I was going to be on the flight with them, and I told her yes. I basically told her yes, and she let me know that they're going to attach this little blue paper thing. Basically you're gonna have like little tickets that you can rip off of it, and so basically what's gonna happen is the dogs are also the last one's loaded in, first one's loaded out, so that way they're not inside of like the hot cargo area of the plane for long, like they're just brought in and out. They're also in a really nice air-conditioned van. It's really cute. It's got like little dogs and cats on the side of it, and it's really nice, so that put my mind at ease. But once I boarded up the plane, while they were still loading in all the suitcases and everything, once the dogs were loaded onto the plane, the people loading the dogs would rip off one of the tags, and it'll say like first trip, second trip. It has the dog's name on there and it has like a code or something on there. The people loading in the dogs will rip the tag to the appropriate flight off, give it to one of the flight attendants, and then the flight attendants will give it to you. And I was still really scared, so I went ahead and asked the flight attendants like, oh, are the pets, like, are there dogs on this flight? Just making sure. So first lady was really nice about it. She went ahead and called and double checked that there was 2 dogs that were going to be loaded on the flight. It wasn't until my second flight that I asked one of the ladies at the gate, like, oh, you know, are there 2 dogs getting on here? I just want to double check, like, I want to make sure that they're getting on this flight in particular and they're not being accidentally put on another flight again because of stuff that's happened in the past. That second lady was really rude and basically told me like, well, if they're scheduled up for this flight, they're going to be on this flight. And I told her like, well, you know, shit happens. I don't know if they're gonna be here. I want to double check. She was really rude. So I ended up asking one of the flight attendants, and she was really apologetic and told me that she would make sure that they were on the flight. And I guess word got back to the lady at the gate, because she was the one who handed me the blue ticket, was like, see, I told you they would be on here, trying to act all nice. I was like, you were extremely rude to me 10 minutes ago. No, I'm not buying this nice act. It's fake. And then got the 2 tickets. I was really scared, and I even booked window seats just to make sure like I could see Champ and Leia being loaded into the plane. I even took video of it because I was like, I want to make sure that like my dogs are on here. It was nerve-wracking, but it was a lot easier than I thought it would be. It was still kind of hard. It wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. Oh, and the price. Huh. So they go by weight, and Leia is 86 pounds. My little girl's 86 pounds, and my big boy is 118 pounds. So as you can imagine, it was very expensive. I don't remember the exact number, but it was somewhere in the 1800 range. Yeah, it was very expensive. Like, it is so expensive. I don't know if American Airlines would have been cheaper, but they didn't fly pets out of Texas during the heat, so almost never. Southwest would have been way cheaper, but of course I have 2 large dogs. They don't allow that. So yeah, my only option was United, and it was so expensive. It was because of that. I don't know how I'm gonna be traveling with them in the future if I'm gonna have to board them when I go visit my family for Thanksgiving and Christmas. So that's now something I have to consider, because I don't want to be paying almost $2,000 every time I want to fly my pets. One way too. That was only one way. That wasn't two-way round trip. That was only a one-way trip for the dogs. So don't know if we'll ever be flying United again just because of the price. Like, that was insane. So when the flights were over, I went ahead and double checked where the pickup location was, and again, it says it has all of that on the checklist that it gives you. So I went and picked them up, and they were really happy to see me, and I was really happy that apparently they were really well behaved and they didn't make a sound. They were really quiet. I guess they get a lot of barking dogs there, and my dogs are really quiet, so that was really nice. And I was just so happy that they were okay. I was so worried the whole time. These are my babies. All I could think was if anything happened to them, I would never forgive myself. But they were safe, they were okay, and although the price tag was basically all my arms and legs, I'm really happy that United took good care of them and brought them over here safely. So that's my video. I really hope that I helped some people, because like I said, I couldn't find any real videos of people explaining what their process was and what their experience was traveling with large dogs that were going in cargo. So I hope this helped, and this is where I get stumped for what I'm gonna say. I live across the country now. I live on the East Coast now, which is so different from Texas. Like, that's a whole other video of how different this whole place is. I'm definitely not in Texas anymore. So yeah, hope you enjoyed. If you are not already subscribed, please subscribe, just because it makes me happy. This is kind of just something I do for fun. It helps me get my creativity out. I love to talk about my dogs, obviously. He's just, oh, he's just laying on my lap. Oh, baby. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I guess I hope I'll see you in the next video that I post. Yeah. Okay, bye.